Hello everyone, and welcome back to Flying Through the Helicopter Flying Handbook. This is the first video in Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is about advanced flight maneuvers, and you could say this sort of another way. It's about things that make a helicopter a helicopter. So far, most of the things we've talked about are things that you could do in lesser aircraft, like airplanes, for example. So the start of this chapter, they talk about reconnaissance. So if you're ever going to land off of an airport, it's always a good idea to do some sort of reconnaissance first. Now, of course, the best reconnaissance you can do is ground reconnaissance. If you're able to do some ground reconnaissance before you go somewhere, that's great. If not, obviously, you can do ground reconnaissance after you've landed there. So when it comes to reconnaissance, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later, you have a high reconnaissance. So in a high reconnaissance, you're looking for things like obstructions. Often when we're coming into a confined area, we will go through different acronyms like WAPs, winds, obstacles, path in and out, power available, suitability of landing surface, etc. When you're doing a high reconnaissance, you're a few hundred feet up and you're basically looking for things like obstacles, and that would include stuff like wires. Wires are the bane of helicopter pilots everywhere. And then as you get a little lower, you will essentially complete the same checklist, just a little bit lower. So when you're a little bit lower, that's when you're going to be able to see some of those obstacles, such as wires, a little bit better. And of course, you have to make a decision whether or not you're going to land before you have slowed down below ETL, or effective translational lift speed. So that's a little bit about reconnaissance. Now, the first maneuver they talk about is a maximum performance takeoff. So what is this all about? This is taking off kind of vertically. I say kind of, depending on the helicopter, you may not actually be able to take off strictly vertical. If you're flying something that's kind of underpowered, like a Robinson R22, and you've got two people in it, your chances of going straight up on the departure are about 0. So how do you do a maximum performance takeoff? Basically, what you're going to do is you are going to apply your maximum power. You typically start on the ground for this. You can start from a hover as well. And you will apply max power and see if you're able to climb straight up. If you're not, you might have to push forward a little bit and get a little bit of that air flowing horizontally over your rotors, which, as we've talked about before, is going to make them much more efficient. So you will typically, let's say if you're flying a Schweitzer, you might go straight up to about 200 feet, and then you're going to push forward a little bit in order to get VY, your maximum rate of climb speed. Now, of course, VX in a helicopter is 0, your maximum angle of climbs. So you would push forward gently and look for about 41 knots, and that will give you your maximum climb rate, and that will help you climb out of the valley or whatever it is that you're in. And once you've gotten a little bit of altitude, then you can transition to a more typical climb speed. In the case of the Schweitzer, something more like 60 knots. So that is a max performance takeoff. And here they show you a picture where you're clearing an obstacle. And this exact profile is going to vary from one helicopter to another. All right, we're going to go ahead and do a max performance takeoff. So I will go ahead and start by rolling up my power. Start pulling a little collective. Getting a little light. Coming straight up. Up, 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 up. And when it comes straight up to a couple hundred feet, if I can do it, make sure I clear any obstacles. And then I'll start pushing forward, looking for that 41 knots, which is VY for the Schweitzer. And then I can do a normal climb from there.